If you are what you say you are, a superstar.
Well, hey everyone, welcome back to this installment of Roots. I'm here chilling with Ava, who's gonna be kind of leading the way today, and so we are actually here, this is like the first live conversation we've had at a location.
It's been a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, but this is a place that I come quite a bit. I bring a lot of people here.
Yeah, right on. Yeah, so this is Communion. Is that just it? Communion
Coffee house, and workspace maybe. People bring their businesses here sometimes and do like little meetings. I think they have meeting rooms back there.
Yeah, no, I've definitely seen that. It's like a co-op kind of situation. They do a lot, and they've also got like a restaurant side and a coffee house side, which is
really
like
nice.
Very, very bougie.
Yeah, lots of options there.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, tell us a little bit about Communion and about like your relationship with it and why it is holy ground, and we'll just kind of dig into that from there.
Yeah, for sure. So I've been coming here for about maybe 4 or 5 years. It used to kind of be, it kind of was just an empty space for a really long time, and then they totally came and renovated it a few years ago. But I've lived in this area my whole life, and it's, it has its, there's a lot of little places in this neighborhood that I hold pretty close to me, pretty dear to me, and I've always been a fan of coffee, so of course I had to come try it out. And my dad actually comes here quite a bit and has breakfasts and brunches with his friends, and I just think it's a really great place. It's so local. It's only like 2 minutes away from my house. It just feels very like set apart. It's kind of in a little, it has its little like nook in the area. It's kind of set away from the street. There's kind of some trees over there. There's a little bit of like a grassy area right on the side. Yeah. It's a really nice, quiet, like calm place to have like a conversation with someone and to bring someone for like a snack or for breakfast, and just to kind of sit down and talk and just like really get to have some good conversations with people.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I do it's kind of funny. We can see the highway right there, and it's like quieter than it is like at the church building, which is also right next to the highway. But like you said though, it's kind of this matter of connection, and as we were talking about before, there's this community aspect, but there's something really special and kind of magical about places like this specifically, where you either have brunch or like have a cup of coffee, that helps us get into an aspect of community that is really important and really vital, but also might have a bunch of hurdles, and that is this idea of authenticity, right? This idea that we experience community, or at the very least groups, a lot, right? Like you're going through the hall at school, and that feels like a big group, like you're around so many people. But when it comes to this question of like authenticity and like having real like true connection with people, that's a little rarer. So yeah, tell me a little bit about maybe an experience that you've had here where this spot broke down some of those barriers and allowed you to have a more authentic connection with someone.
So I have a friend named Ella who I haven't known for a super long time. I've only known her for a year, and she is someone that I really admire. I really look up to her. She's a really spiritual person, and I brought her here just to kind of engage in some conversation. And I had actually been going through a pretty tough time at the time. I had been really struggling with my mental health, physical health, and I really just wanted to let her know about that. And I thought this was a really good place to come and be vulnerable with her and just kind of share what I had been experiencing for the past few weeks. And once I did, after I told her about that, she's an amazing listener. She just listened to me and took it all in and absorbed it. And she asked if she could pray for me, which I was a little bit taken aback at first, because I don't have a ton of friends that would just offer to pray for me like that. It was kind of surprising. And after she did, well, of course, I was like, that's so sweet. Like, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And then she just bowed her head and started praying for me right there. And it was just such an amazing Christ-like gesture.
Yeah.
And she just started pouring these words out of her, and they were just so articulate and so full of love and passion, and I felt like I could feel the Holy Spirit in the way that she was talking to me, and it was just so powerful and amazing. I definitely started tearing up a little bit. It was just, I really felt like I had that faith-driven spiritual connection with someone that I hadn't had in a while. So that's just one specific instance I can think of a time that I really got to just lay it all out there for someone to see and to accept and to encourage me during that time in my life.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, and I think, again, to kind of talk about place, even as you were talking about, like, you knew you wanted to talk with Ella and meet up, and so it's kind of this question of, like, all right, where is this going to happen?
Right, yeah.
And I think that really speaks to this idea, like we talked about at the very beginning of this series, that, like, holy can be misunderstood as a word that's, like, very hoity-toity, very churchy and proper, but holy just means set apart, and it's like a pretty deliberate thing. And so this sounds like very much holy ground because it was a conscious choice that you thought about and decided, I think this is the place to have, like, this conversation and intentionally engage at a deeper level.
Yeah, absolutely.
So when you think about, like, authenticity, that has the potential to be kind of like a buzzword for some people, right? But, like, what do you think of when you think of authenticity? Sort of, in your own words, define. But yeah, what comes to mind, and what does that sort of evoke for you?
For me, when I think about authenticity, I really just think about being vulnerable with someone, which makes me think about Brene Brown a little bit, actually.
Nice.
And in vulnerability, I really just think that could be defined as just kind of like taking away those barriers and things that hold you back from freely expressing what is going on in your life and your mind. And, if there's anything that is really weighing you down, being able to be open about that.
Yeah.
And, with vulnerability comes connection and growth, honestly.
Yeah.
And finding strength through that connection and encouragement, and through those relationships that you are able to build through that. I would think authenticity is just being able to really openly be yourself, and to not be afraid of judgment or of criticism. I would definitely say that vulnerability it's a real strength that you have to have, and it takes practice.
Right.
You can't just, it's something that a lot of people are really afraid of, because with vulnerability can come really strong fear of judgment, especially if you don't really have a good idea about how that person's going to react, or a really good feel for your relationship. So I would definitely say that it takes a lot of trust as well.
Nice. Yeah, and you're already getting into what I was thinking of next, right? Which is, if we think vulnerability is such a good thing, and that's not fair. I was going to say I haven't met a lot of people who are like, I don't like vulnerability. I think there actually are a lot of people who would say no, because again, it has this feeling of weakness when in fact it is strength, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So even so though, right, like if we do think it's a good thing that it enriches our lives, it helps us go deeper, it helps us grow, it's a strength, what makes it so difficult to do? And you already hit on part of that, right, of like this fear.
Yeah, definitely. I would say fear of judgment. And honestly, it can be a little bit painful if you're not used to opening up to people. There's also fear not only of judgment, but that relationship will actually weaken, and that the person will not, continue to see you in the same light, or won't continue to accept you, or the relationship will just have a different dynamic that you don't want, or that wasn't there before. And there's also that thing of not just fear of judgment, but not wanting people to feel burdened by your experiences, and not wanting people to feel sorry for you, which is a really, that's a really painful thought pattern to get into. Sure. Because that can also bring a lot of suffering and a lot of, like fear is really the main thing that I think of. when I
Yeah.
think of that.
Well, and you already brought up Brene Brown, but I hear a lot of that too, this idea of the story we tell ourselves.
Definitely.
And if we're afraid of being judged, or we might even be afraid of like, what if they say something I can't
Right,
handle,
yeah.
and all of a sudden we're telling ourselves this story of these burdens that feel too much for me are also going to be too much for them.
Right.
It's going to dissolve this relationship that I already have.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and it keeps all those walls up. In fact, I was just talking to another person just at the beginning of this week who was kind of laying some stuff out, and they told me, sometimes I just get so scared that, if I tell a friend this thing, they're going to think, oh, you're such a bad person, like I don't want anything to do with you.
Right.
And I was like, I hear that, I feel that, and also I think that's like the most common fear
Right.
people have, and we're all sitting around thinking, like being afraid of the same thing and ultimately kind of being afraid of one another,
Yeah,
not
exactly.
realizing that if we share that fear, that kind of boils down to, oh, you're not actually going to do that to me? Oh, I'm not going to do that to you either. Like, but we're just not
Right.
speaking it, right?
Yeah. We have this like mental block there.
Exactly.
Of just the fear about how others are perceiving us as well.
Yeah. And like that's not like a new problem either. Like this idea of authenticity is not a word that actually shows up in the Bible much, if at all, in
Yeah.
its like actual form of authenticity. But it's definitely a principle and an idea that is present in relationships, and I think is very near to the heart of God, and certainly near to the heart of discipleship and the things that keep us together as a community of Christ followers. So I'm curious if what comes to mind when you think of, I don't know, where you see authenticity somewhere in the biblical narrative.
Right. Well, there's that, there are a lot of examples in the Bible of people having to be authentic with God. And, but what I was thinking about more specifically in regards to like relationships is different friendships throughout the Bible
Yeah.
that are really like faith focused. And one of them that specifically comes to mind is the one between Ruth and Naomi.
Yeah.
And there's a specific verse where Ruth is talking to Naomi and declares that wherever you go, I will go, and wherever you stay, I'll stay. And that's another thing that we actually have a song about that.
Right.
That is kind of talking about that in regards to God, but in its original context, that was to another person.
Yeah.
And I think that is really powerful. It's a really powerful thought there of being just so raw with another person and just really, having that Christ-like connection to someone and really seeing them and loving them.
Yeah.
And really pursuing a relationship with someone. That's a really good example of it in the Bible that just kind of shows, kind of the sacred quality of that.
Yeah.
And the ability that we have as humans to form those strong connections.
So you mentioned earlier, I wanted to come back to, you mentioned that it takes practice to be vulnerable and to be authentic with people. What are some ways that you have practiced that? Because it's not like a sport where you show up to practice and run
Right,
drills.
yeah.
It feels a little more freeform, but how
Yeah,
has that looked
definitely.
for you?
For me, I think the ways that I try to practice authenticity are deliberately reaching out to people, I would say, is something that I try to do by scheduling times to come and hang out with people in person if I can.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes that's not always possible, but putting aside time to call them and just kind of engaging in that conversation and letting them know how I'm doing, asking about how they're doing. Another thing that I do is I try to pray for people in my life, or write down a list of things that I need to pray for myself and for others. Some really like authentic things that they're experiencing in their lives right at that point.
Yeah.
And another thing that I do that I think is probably a little bit of a better like first step because it's really scary to start that vulnerability process.
Yeah. It feels like it could even be
so-
like prone
really
to like
daunting.
denial, right? Like,
Yeah.
I'm authentic.
Yeah.
I'm vulnerable
it's really
with people.
difficult. But one thing that you can start doing is, I think, by just practicing listening and practicing being a really good receiver of people's authentic experiences whenever you are in that conversation. Even if you aren't ready to share something yet, or you don't feel comfortable, that's okay. And it takes time. Definitely, it takes it takes a lot of courage. But just by listening to someone else's story and encouraging them in that, you are you can kind of learn that authenticity is something that is a really great thing to work towards.
Yeah. We're going to have a couple questions for y'all to think about right here for you to dwell on as we consider authenticity and the way that pulls us to one another and closer to the heart of God. But Ava, thank you for bringing me
you.
to communion and sharing your holy ground. I can't believe we made it to a coffee house and didn't make a holy grounds joke the whole time.
Oh my gosh.
It was staring us right in the
Wow.
face.
Wow.
But until then,
Incredible.
friends, take heart in the fact that your most authentic self, without any masks and with all your fears and mistakes and shortcomings, your most authentic self is loved by God. It is enough. You are enough, and nothing can take that away. We will see you next time.
All right. Bye.